I can't hear you. Are you?
Morning, Jordan. I'm in the process of going live.
Oh, there you are. I can hear you now. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't hooked up yet. As you can see, it's kind of bright here, so my glasses are all dark.
Oh, do they change based on your light?
Yeah, I resisted it for 30 years, but finally I decided, okay, I'll get them, and it worked. They work pretty well.
Cool.
Let's see. Uh, Good morning, everyone. Okay, give me, you can chat about whatever you like for a couple of minutes. I need to go get some water.
Okay.
Good morning, Art. Nice to see you. Oops, we lost. I do. Um, I'm I guess we're here. We are here. Uh, there's Jordan. Okay, when you blocked yourself, then and I stepped away, it looked like we weren't here. Okay, I'm going to take a minute to go get some water, and I'll be right back. I'm back. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Sometimes we have to take care of things. Uh,
Water is important.
yeah, so it seems. Okay, so last week, um, we were talking about what Hillman said about the Red Book, and so um, there's a paragraph before. I'm going to start in the middle of the paragraph. And it says Hillman speaks of the Red Book in terms of psychodramatics rather than psychodynamics, mixing of styles, mixing of genres, mixing of categories, constantly ringing the changes, picaresque autobiography, poetic memoir, allegory, poetic prose, and pure lyric poetry, autobiography, soliloquy, Ignatian examination of conscience, confession, classical dialogue between soul and body, explicitly passages of philosophical, theological, and psychological exegesis, dithyrambic energies recalling Nietzsche. Whew, that's quite a sentence.
And as Nietzsche would say, I write in 2 sentences what other men write in a whole book. So I think that was the longest appositive sentence ever.
Yeah, something like that. And so
which actually speaks to it. It's
yeah,
psychodynamic.
I mean it explains why this book is the Red Book is so difficult for average human beings to get their minds around. You just bounce off of it at the beginning because you think you understand what you're reading and then it becomes something else and then it becomes something else and blah blah blah, and you really don't know what's happening. And it's sort of like being born. Okay, in other words, when you when you when you're born, you don't know anything, and so all this stuff is happening around you, and you just don't have a clue what's going on, and it takes years to understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly acknowledge took me years. And so this is a good time to say what we're going to be doing in the advanced reading group. And I'm going to show this book. So I'm going to take my background off for a moment so that you can see. Um, okay, so here's this book called The Red Book Hours by Jill Mellick, and it weighs a ton. I mean, it's not a ton, but it weighs at least 10 pounds, if not more. And in our ice and snow here in Annapolis, um, I had a heck of a time even getting it down here. But as you see, it rivals the Red Book in its size. Um, so the Red Book Hours is the name of it, and it's by Jill Mellick. And what this is a detailed discussion of Jung's process. And so let's see. Okay, so here's just I opened randomly to a page, and uh, here's a photograph of a view that Jung had in his lifetime, and that's one of the quarries he used on the other side, and then a portion of one of his paintings, and he so anyway, there's a quote here that she highlighted about this particular little spot, this little part of this painting. And what she had done is taken just portions of paintings and um, then talked about them in very interesting detail. And so there's a quote, and this is a quote from Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections, page 7. It says, I was informed that children as small as I could not go along. There was nothing to be done about it. From then on, the Uetliberg and Zurich became an unattainable land of dreams, near to the glowing snow-covered mountains. Um, and so, in other words, he hadn't been allowed to go out on a field trip with his parents, and the result of that was that he was disappointed as a child and didn't realize that he would grow into it later on. Okay, so anyway, this is a heavy book. It's going to take us over a year to talk about it, maybe a couple of years. And and I did interview Jill Mellick, so I will try to pull that up in a moment. But I wanted everybody to know about this because it seems that it would be interesting to others. And so we meet on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I know that that's very inconvenient for most people, but for many people, but that's when I can do it during a busy week. And so it's 5 p.m. every Wednesday, and we have a good following of people that come on every week. And Sheree says I will have to buy it. Yeah, it's $100 on Amazon right now, this book.
I was
And
surprised that it was that low. I just looked and I thought it would be more like when the Red Book first came out, you're dealing with like 390 or.
right, right. And so anyway,
That's an important book, because Hillman here talking about psychodramatics rather than psychodynamics, and then the rest of the sentence is psychodramatics, and it's a big word salad. It's philosophical. It's not experiential.
yeah,
And the Hours book with Jill Mellick seems like that's taking the psychodynamics approach of living the experiential part of Jung more, instead of being that we keep going. I keep forgetting the word, but it means interpretation, and
yeah,
then interpreting. It's no, he said this, and this was his experience, instead of trying to kind of try to squeeze the lemon juice out of the lemon kind of thing.
right. Okay, now I did find the Melick book, or I'm sorry, the interview that I did of Jill Melick. And so we have Kathy joining us. Good.
Oh, cool.
So here is the link to the interview. I'm putting it on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on YouTube. Um, that is the link to the interview I did with Jill Melick, and Tim worked with me on that. I think Tim did most of the questioning actually, but anyway, I organized it and we got it to happen. And how are you, Kathy? Nice to see you. Um, anyway, we did that interview. Here is, let's see, in the chat on Zoom, I can give you and Kathy the link also. Wait a minute. There it is. Should be that. And so if you want to hear Jill Melick talk about it, she was, when we did it, she was in stage 4 cancer, and I suspect by now she probably has died, but she, in fact, we can confirm that right now, I suppose. Let's see. This was a couple years ago. Wikipedia, Jill Melick. Okay. Public figure. Born in Australia. doesn't seem to be giving us her death date or her birth date or her death date, but
That's a shame that she.
yeah, I mean she was quite ill, but she rallied for this interview because oh, here it is. She passed away on December 20th, 2022. So she died 2 years ago. And so that's that. Um, so, but she put 15 years into this book, and to her great credit. And and you heard what book we're talking about, Kathy? I guess we're talking about the Red Book Hours by Jill Melick. And in the advanced reading group, we're gonna start reading it at some point. I suspect we won't get to it for another 2 or 3 months because we're still working with the Red Book itself, and that's I think it's important to get through that first. But it's something that if you wanted to get a head start on it, that would be something to get into your library, because it's going to be too heavy for me to lift up and hold up to the camera every time.
Right.
So somehow I'm going to have to take pictures of pages or something. But
But to sit and get fit.
yeah, got to get fitter than I am now. That's for sure. It is a tome, a good doorstop. Anyway, so we seem to have gathered an audience here, and we should move on. And at the end of this, for those who don't know, I finished my painting entitled Vision of America #1. And I began it on January 19th, 2024, and I painted it until yesterday. It took me a year to paint this picture. Meanwhile, I was doing many other paintings because I was doing studies to try to figure out what I was doing. And anyway, at least for me, I'm satisfied with the result. I wasn't doing it to sell it to anybody else. So, but I probably will photograph it and make prints of it after I figure out what size print is optimal on it, because it's a huge painting. It's 40 inches wide and 25 and a half inches tall. And what, to what? You have to unmute, Kathy, because I don't get you. Go ahead.
Let's see it.
You see it? Oh, you found it. You saw it.
We want to see your painting.
Oh, okay. I'll do it. If you insist. I was gonna save it to the end, but I guess I can't do that now since I've mentioned it. Let's see here. Where is it? It's going the wrong direction. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So here it is, for what it's worth. Okay, there you go. I think it's probably mind-blowing the first time you look at it. But if you look at this from different distances, there's a lot in there. Okay, I'll just give you a couple of hints about things that are in there. This is probably looking at it from about 5 feet, which is not optimal. but because if you look at it from 10 feet away, it's really awesome. You start to see faces in it that are take up almost a quarter of the page. But I'll zoom in on it a bit so that we can see some of the smaller faces in it. There's probably, I don't know, there might be 1,000 individuals in this, at least several hundred individuals. I don't really know how many. And let's see, where's the two I wanted to show? Even I can't find them right now. I haven't stared at this enough, but I think if you look carefully, you can see this redheaded opera singer here, and there's all kinds of things, and it changes as you look at it.
I'm seeing a lot of horse heads also.
What do you see?
Horse heads.
Horse heads. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, I never saw a horse head. Oh, the one here it is. This green fellow here, and you can see the yellow in his hot eye. It's only half of his face, right? But you can see his shock and his downturned mouth here. Are you seeing that, Jordan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then right off of his shoulder is a chin and nose of another guy going up in multiple colors. Okay.
There's a double face on the left that takes up almost half of that left side.
Yeah.
Big hair at the top, and then it looks like two giant whiskers coming out of the eyes or something.
Right.
A yellow eye and then an orange eye.
Right. And the funny thing is, when I first started to paint this, it really had gotten away from me in the doodle, and so I saw one shape that I thought seemed evil, and in the finished product, I cannot even find that shape, and I painted it first. Because according to dictum, the evil comes out first, and it sort of troubled me that it did.
Well, the evil coming out first reminds me of the whole the complete Pandora's box story, which I've looked into that simply because any woman worth demonizing is probably worth getting to know a lot better. And they truncate the story right at the point where they can blame her for all the bad in the world. Except the true translation accurately of what they're calling box is actually vessel. Right. And that vessel is her. Mm-hmm. And what happens is first she opens herself, and all the ills and malaise and evils come out. Come out into the world. But after all that happens, call that the Negretto, and she's cleansing, changing the filter, the story continues. And the next thing she does is she peers into the vessel, meaning herself. And she sees the only thing left is a golden, yod, fledgling, eternal hope squirming. And she picks it up and she puts it in her heart. And that's the whole story. So the evil comes out first, but then they stop the story there so they can, pick on another chick. And and that's to me manipulative translation, because then you don't have to deal with the power of a woman.
Yeah. So anyway, there's 77 and a half hours of work into this painting. and I will show it after the doodle, the first doodle, and I'll demonstrate here that this purple space is what I saw as evil. And so I painted it
That looks like a Da Vinci
first.
tempest.
A Da Vinci what?
Tempest.
Tempest, yeah, because Da Vinci used to do this kind of stuff. He would rub charcoal on the walls of I guess Venice, and then or the walls of Florence maybe, and then he would see faces and figures coming out of it. So this image is about 6 weeks into it. As I said, this is quite large, and so it took quite a long time to complete the doodle. And where you see darker spots, that's where I put marks so that I could even find the thread of what I was doing, because technically this is all one line, or maybe 4 or 5 lines. I might have lost the thread, but and had to start over. But what you see here, you cannot find in the original or in the final product. It's just so immense. And
What's
so,
interesting, the doodle then is like a seed in a garden, and you plant it as you paint it, and so it disappears underneath the ground, and then you get the foliage and the blooms.
right. So the process is you doodle, you do whatever comes to mind. I actually can show you a doodle that I started this morning. I got a new palette of color. Let's see, years. Let's go by years. 2025. I got a new palette of koi watercolors that I had asked my wife for Christmas, and
Interesting. I got my mom and I, when I was in Houston visiting for Christmas, one day went to the art store, and because a friend of mine here had given me a really nice watercolor rag deckled edge sketchbook.
mm-hmm.
And to me, it was kind of a kick in the rumpus in all the right ways. And so I got all these different sumi brush pens and calligraphy pens and some Pentel sign pens because they're really easy to work with. But
Right. So this is what I started with this morning. She gave me this set, which was I think $100. It's 90 colors in it, and I wanted to get every color into this painting in the doodle first, and so I did that. I doodled using every color in the palette so far. And of course, all this will disappear in the finished painting, and I have no idea what the finished painting is going to turn out to be, but you could also already see people in it. Like here is somebody with eyes closed and a little bit of a frown, and here's somebody with a big mouth, and here's somebody with a long nose. Those may disappear because I'm not finished with the doodle yet. But anyway, that's what I did this morning, and I just wanted to show the palette that I've been using. But you don't need a palette like that to try to do this. All you need is a little watercolor set for $5 that you can get at Michael's, and any piece of paper will do. And I've tried it on all sorts of different pieces of paper. I've finally settled on 300-pound or 300-gram paper, which is 140-pound paper, 140-pound watercolor, hot pressed I prefer hot press because the paper is smooth, whereas cold
that's
pressed, you get all the ridges and stuff.
funny because I prefer the cold press and the 140 pound, the 300 GSM, just because I like the tooth of the paper.
Yeah.
And
Well, I used it for some things, but anyway, the reason I emphasize this is because Jill Mellick emphasizes it in Jung's Red Book Hours. She noted that Jung was creating throughout his life, and his point was always that we should all be creators, creators of something. You don't, it doesn't have to be good, and it doesn't have to be marketable. And, what I've found is when I'm doing it, for me, it's a meditation technique. Okay, because I could never quite sit still for the traditional sitting meditation methods, and I have 3 joint replacements in my legs now, so it's very painful for me to sit in anything but a very comfortable chair, and so I cannot do a traditional sitting meditation, and I mean, I can do it, and I have done a lot of it over many years. About 30 years that my wife and I have been studying Tibetan Buddhism, but I've found by starting this, doing this early in the morning for about an hour every morning at 6 a.m., I've found it to be a terrific meditation technique for me, because I get that time my mind readjusts and brings me to wholeness, and then I can go off and face my kids or something else. If you don't know, if you're watching this and you don't know what I'm talking about, at age 75, I took up teaching because our local county school district was crying for teachers. And I had, in 1966, I made a decision while I was in college to get certified as a teacher, uh, in order to have a profession I could fall back on if I didn't do anything else. And I didn't know what I wanted to be at that time. And so I took all the courses that were needed to be certified as a teacher, okay, in my junior and senior year of college. And I got a temporary certificate the day I graduated from college in 1968. And when I went to law school, that counted as a doctorate. And so they gave me a permanent teaching certificate in the state of New York in 1974. But I never taught a day for the next 50 years in K through 12. I did teach Marines. I've taught a lot. I've taught a couple of years in graduate school. I've taught 5 years undergraduate, all as adjuncts, never as a full-time job except for the graduate school. But anyway, I remained a permanently certified teacher in the state of New York. So when Maryland was screaming, they wouldn't accept my New York certification until I took a praxis exam, 2 praxis exams, in fact. But I could substitute. So for 1 year, I substituted. And then for the last 2 years, I've been a full-time special education teacher in our most difficult middle school. Basically, either you have to be suspended a couple of times from one of our 20 or so middle schools, 2 suspensions, or your parents are fed up with you can't handle you, so they send us to us. and we iron them out and send them back to a general education school eventually. In most cases, we do have 1 or 2 kids that stick with us for the whole program, but and we have 6th through 12th grade in my school now, but we started last year. We only had 6 through 9, and my grades are 6 through 8, so I get the middle school kids, all of them, and they're the tough ones. Anyway, all right.
Hey, Skip, before you move on, I just am
Yeah.
compelled to ask you, how's the gratification level going in that position for you?
Oh, actually, I've found I love it, actually. And much to my surprise, and it's very sad in many cases. I mean, very, very sad. They're kids that have had horrible things happen to them in their lives. And um, just tell you, I mean, but the satisfactions are amazing. I had one breakthrough because I was also teaching with the art teacher last year. We were doing project-based learning last year, and I had one breakthrough that was remarkable, I thought. And then it became very sad again. But here's what happened. Kid comes in, he's in the 6th grade, I think, 6th grade. And he's a tough kid. He's always beaten up on other kids. He comes into my classroom for the PBL class, the art class, and all he does for 7 weeks of this quarter that I had him is lie on a shelf facing the wall and never moving. It turns out that his father is incarcerated right now. I don't know why. And, it's very, very sad. So, anyway, during this quarter, we were painting a mural of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And this mural was an immense thing. It was 24 feet long. and 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 we had to work on it consistently for the hour that we had every day for the quarter in order to finish it, right? If you could imagine painting a 24-foot long and 3.5-foot wide mural of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, with 2 teachers and 2 students, because the other students flaked out for various reasons. And one of the students was lying against the wall. Okay. So it was basically the 2 teachers and 1 student who did most of the painting. And so we get to the end of it, and I said, well, we have to put the name of what we've painted on the mural, and we have to put our names on it. We have to sign it because we're going to put it up. We ultimately put it up in the cafeteria of the school. And so all of a sudden, this kid rolls over. He hasn't faced us through the whole quarter, rolls over and says, "I'll do that." And so I said, "Fine, here's the paints. Here's what I want you to paint on it, name of the novel and our names." And he says, "I don't like any of those colors." So, this is a purple shirt. He wanted this color, actually. And so my colleague said, I'll take him to the art room and find him the color he wants. And the color he wants is this, right? And so they go away for about 15 minutes. When they come back, they have the paint, and he goes boom, 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 and did it in the remainder of the period, which was maybe in 20 minutes. He wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the four names of the people, two adults and two children. And I have to say, it's so bad it's good. And since I've devoted so much time to this, I guess I have to show it to you. So
Kind of cicada, he, after 17 years or whatever, he wakes up and emerges in your class.
Right.
That's
yeah. So that's the good story. Let's see. It was 24. No, it was the end of 23 that this happened. So it's like November of 23. Let me see if I can find this picture quickly. Pretty sure I have it. I'm closing in on it. Oh, come on. Must have been in December of 23. I think I found it. They've made it so difficult to get to stuff. Apple has done this to us.
no, I hate it when they reorganize things I've already organized. It's
right. Yeah, I mean, it's just
like a copier that's too smart for its own good.
Yeah, it's
No,
terrific.
change the tent, leave it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't seem to have the finished product, but here I can show you me working on it in the art room. So here's the squid, and it's reaching out, and here is where the submarine is going to be for 20,000 Leagues. So that's one picture from a series. So why did they do that to us? Wait a minute. I have one other alternative. Mary Moss. Can I find it here? I can. Isn't that wonderful? I outsmarted it. Okay, so they're the two murals that we did. One is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on the right, and you can see my students. You can see his title and our names there. And, it's really so bad it's good. And then here's Hidden Figures. And one of my 8th grade girls had the idea of representing Hidden Figures by showing the black ladies who did all the calculations for the early Mercury program inside the head of her boss, who was a white guy, right? So it's inside his brain. And here are the 3 actresses who were the leads in the movie, and so the movie is called, and the book is called Hidden Figures, and it goes out to Pluto here, from the sun to Pluto. And so on here, I don't know if we can see it, but I got one of the boys who was very difficult, another one, to sign his name. And here it's upside down because he did it from the opposite side of the table. So it's BLM, that are his initials. It doesn't stand for Black Lives Matter. It stands for his initials. And I got him to sign it. And so I was very pleased with that. And that was all the good news from that these two very tough kids who were beating up on everybody during the school year. But in my class, they did that. Unfortunately, 4 months later, the two of them were getting off their bus and they were shot by students from the building that I'm now in, which was which was the senior high school for alternative learning. But two of these kids, we changed buildings at the beginning of this year. So I'm now in that school, Phoenix Academy. And so two of the kids apparently from Phoenix Academy, I guess were angry that these two kids were beating up on younger kids, younger siblings. And so one fine day, as they were getting off the bus, they shot them. And the older boy, I think, is now back. The younger one, the one who was lined up against the wall and who painted the names, never came back, as of yet anyway. Apparently he was severely injured below the waist. So
It's a shame.
yeah.
I mean,
So it's, you think your life is tough and such, and then that's the type of thing we have to deal with. So there, in answer to your question, Kathy, there are highs and lows involved, and I'll tell you that the faculty that I work with are the most empathetic group of people I've ever met. It's almost unbelievable who they are and how they present themselves in the world, because we have 100 kids in this school in 7 grades, grade 6 through 12. We have 100. In the 7th grade, for example, this year we only had 2. And in the 6th grade, for the first quarter, we only had 1 student. And so, but here's how it goes. One day last year, there were 7 adults in a room with 1 child, and it wasn't enough adults, if you can believe that. 7 adults, and it wasn't enough adults. That's a rare occasion, but it's also shocking. Okay, and so, and I'm the special educator. That means I'm not technically I'm not teaching any of the primary classes, math, science, social studies, and English. But I'm a co-teacher, which means I'm supposed to offer my help to these students in the classroom. And so sometimes it's just 2 teachers and 1 student. And we had this 6th grader, and he had 7 of us on a merry chase at one point early in the year. And so this is I was putting in like 2 hours, 2 miles a day walking just in the hallways. And so finally at Christmas time, I ordered a walker. because my cane was bashing my shoulder every step I took. I was hitting the floor with my cane, and it bashes straight through to my shoulder, and it started to become quite painful. So I finally, on Christmas Day, I ordered a walker. Amazingly, it was shipped on Christmas Day and arrived 2 days later. Amazing result.
Is it your left or your right shoulder?
It's my right shoulder that it's the left side where I have two joint replacements.
That's interesting because this one's been freezing. After early October, I wrapped up a shoplifter and slammed him into the concrete with my right side. But I realized that transferred through the clavicles and just banged the left. So between both of us, we've got no shoulders. It's because it's opening up now, but
so I
realized you had that impact piece.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll show you, let's see, months. I can show you a picture of my jalopy. It's quite convenient now. Let's see if I can find it. Oop, I don't want that one necessarily. Let's see. Sorry,
You guys need to
folks,
get yourselves a TENS unit so that when you're at home, you can apply the patches and give yourself some electrostim healing sessions at home if you like. They're very, very affordable, incredibly effective.
Oh, that's a good idea. How do I get it? So there's my jalopy.
Capital A for Amazon, my friend.
Okay, what is it called?
I will send you an email. It's called a TENS, TENS unit.
Okay. Yeah, if you would, that'd be useful. So anyway, there I am with my jalopy.
Wow.
And
that's quite the rig.
Huh?
Yeah, it is crazy. Wow. You don't mess around.
Yeah, it's cool. It's $200, so it's not bad. And it's very.
It's got the handbrakes, and so it keeps you in control of. It doesn't. I know a lot of people when they first get a walker fall because it gets away from them.
Yeah, this is good, but
wow.
Yeah, did I tell you all about my Christmas? What happened during my Christmas holiday?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should mention that. Let's see. Let's see. I don't seem to be able to nail the picture I wanted. Darn it. I really hate it when they do this to me. But in any case, what happened was I gave all of my fellow faculty members, save 5 because I didn't have enough, a print for Christmas as a Christmas gift. And it seems that they wanted to provide recognition. So on the last 2 hours of the school before we went on holiday, we had a party in the gym or in the cafeteria, multi-purpose room. And so one of the things that they did, and there were parents there and grandparents and so on. And so they were giving out door prizes, and they said, well, we have this for the oldest person in the room. And I wasn't paying any attention because I was figuring they meant the oldest parent, right? I'm a staff member, so I didn't expect it was me. And all of a sudden, they plopped this huge basket, a great big thing. It was about 2 feet high and, like an Easter basket, but it was filled with all kinds of candy and you name it in there. And they said, because I'm the oldest person present, I get this basket. Well, my Pennsylvania Dutch ancestors, the ones who find buttons too prideful, all of a sudden reared up and said, "No, you can't take this out of this school. There's no way that you can take this gift out of this school." And so it took about 15 minutes for that to work in my unconscious, right? I mean, they'd given me this thing and I'd set it aside on a table and we had gone on with the event, um, but my Pennsylvania Dutch ancestors just screamed at me. So I said, "Oh God." I said to one of the nurses who was next to me, I said, "I can't take this home." And she says, "Oh, well, take it home. Your wife will like it, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "No, I can't do this." So finally and this is the way our life goes at this place. Finally, I caught up with the assistant principal about 15 minutes later, and I said, "I can't take this, okay? Please find the parent in the room who's the most deserving and give it to them." And so she goes over and picks it up off the table. And right in front of me, it turned out, she hands it to this woman who's in her early 70s, I think. And it turns out she's raising 12 children, 6 girls and 6 boys. And I said, "Well, okay, she's the right person for this."
Brady
But
Bunch time too.
yeah, but I mean, you could imagine that it's, you know, all the parents have flaked out one way or another from drugs or what have you. And so that's the kids we get. Um, so that's what my work week is like. So so this is kind of a vacation compared to that.
It's interesting you
Anyway,
say that because I mean I keep
okay.
this on my, it's probably backwards, but this on my
Okay,
desk,
sorry, I kept pulling my headset out. What did you say? You keep this in your
this on my desk, and
uh-huh.
it was just a stocking stuffer from my mom several years ago. But sitting at my table this summer, someone said, "You're always so calm. How do you do that?" And I said, "Come on, I I had the kahunas to build a job where I just sit at a table pretty much in a Spanish garden with flowers, and I get paid to talk to people with pictures. Every problem I have is a first world problem. So the amount of gratitude I can live with needed to go up to the primary fuel I use. And then I started looking around and that, like your school experience where no, that's the difficult that
Mhm.
I sit in a Spanish garden, have an office with no walls, a mandala tablecloth,
Right.
my own tarot deck that I had published, and everything is a first world problem. And
Hmm.
so if I complain at all, pretty much, I think that I'm out of line. So in a sense, I laugh because you have the Pennsylvania Dutch, which is, very, very properly humble kind of thing. And I have the, if I complain, I need to scold myself and go, no. Well, why am I so irritated? That's stupid. So I think it's interesting because understanding where hardship really is is an important part of empathy.
Yeah. So just for clarity to the whole audience, this is why I found this painting so helpful to me in terms of, I mean, you can see the orders of magnitude of the pain and suffering that I face every day, 8 hours a day, every school day. And you can see why I'm so impressed with my fellow faculty members, because they're so empathetic and they're so caring for our students, that it's just unbelievable. And we do make progress with these students. We do. And we made very significant progress with our sixth grader, for example, in one semester. And but I mean, there was a period at the beginning of the year where I was clocking about 2 miles a day walking, chasing this kid around the halls. Oh boy. Anyway, so for me, Jung, despite the fact, and going back now to how we began this with James Hillman's comment about the Red Book, that it's so many different facets to it. All of us have a very complicated life. There's so many different facets to our lives right now. I mean, we were losing a major American city, for crying out loud, right now, and in fire. And who had that on their bingo card, right? Who expected that to happen? And meanwhile, we've come back to school after the Christmas holiday, and we've had only 4 days, 2 of which have been half days, because of a snowstorm. And so we all have crazy stuff happening to us every day. So it's no wonder that people have mental health problems and so on. And go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say right there, the mental health problems. And I think a lot of the mental health problems stem from industrial seed oil, processed food, and constant bread and circuses, distractions in the media of things that are or aren't true. But what happens is with most people who are prone to succumb to the power of suggestion, it gets them in a position where they can't even discern what they believe.
Right.
And it basically it untrusts your gut. And I think all the sensationalism and people just hear something, and hearsay is then spread around like facts. And people say like scientific consensus, and the word consensus is the most unscientific word there is, because science is about facts, not about voting. And so I think what's interesting is, like you said, then the mental health issues happen, because everything is always an interference pattern. And for example, like your Rocky painting, that's one giant energetic force, but it's not an interference pattern. It's a lot of natural movement that then creates centers, like multi-nucleic centers of focus of character that move in and out of view, depending on, do you squint? Do you get across the room? But honestly, the psychodramatics, AKA the media, and then we get actual weather stuff like snowstorms and then fires and just abject mismanagement. The mayor of Palisades goes out of the country when he's
Yeah.
supposed to be doing his job. It's just, so anyway, yeah, the mental health issues, they're all real, but some I think have been fabricated into just confusing people enough to where they can't navigate their own lives very well.
Right. And so that was the first part of my holiday, but the next day, the very next day after the gift package, I had to drive 400 miles north to the Syracuse area, town called Casanova, New York, um, because my daughter's 50th birthday was being celebrated, and it was quite a joyful occasion. But I had to drive by myself because my mother-in-law can't travel, so Deb had to stay with her. Um, and uh, and the last 30 miles, I hit a snowstorm with whiteout conditions, and it took 3 hours to go the last 30 miles. And I very nearly went into a ditch twice to make this trip. And it was a surprise for my daughter. And so everybody loves a surprise party, I think. So I'll just show you the moment of surprise. Now, before I start the video, um, the woman on the right here is my ex-wife and the mother of my daughter. And the woman on the left is my 50-year-old daughter. So this is, she had been told that she was going to have uh, dinner at this lovely restaurant in Casanova. And so she had started out from Albany to Syracuse late, and she arrives an hour late for her own surprise party because she didn't know it was on. So this 43-second video are the moments that first she realizes what's going on. And you're not going to be able to hear this sound, but she recognizes what's going on, and um, uh, then she realizes I'm there, and so the video goes crazy for a bit as she comes over and hugs me, and then you can see what else happens. 43 seconds, so I'll just share it. So she walks into the room. And so my son-in-law had managed to get 40 people there. And this is my number 2 daughter here, Alyssa. And so, doing this work is one of the reasons that I do the work is because some things turn out to be okay. And, a lot of it is trash, but this is the gift of the tree of life, which I gave to some people in this group. And this is the original painting, and I had given some prints of it away before, and there's my daughter receiving it as her 50th birthday gift. So that's the positive reinforcement for doing this work, is that you have something that you can share with your family, maybe, and some people like it. And this is the man here on the right is my daughter's stepfather, who married my ex-wife after we divorced. But anyway, she's quite a vivacious 50-year-old, as you can see. Okay, so that's a little bit too much reminiscing and sharing, but so anyway, I apologize for all that, but there's a reason that I do the painting. I don't do it to make money, and I at some point in my life I might sell spaces, but not soon. And so there we are. All right, so we're back to this. The Jung's Red Book for our time. Searching
Skip,
for
don't apologize for your art, please. Thank you for sharing your family and your memories and your heart and your art. And yeah, I mean, you're creating things to share them, and you're creating moments and you're creating memories, and that's what's important.
well,
And
and
your daughters are gorgeous.
thank
Yeah,
you.
and I think also I appreciate you said that, Kathy, because it's also so apropos because you're not doing philosophical mumbo jumbo psychodramatics. You're doing the psychodynamics life. I mean, even psychodynamics is kind of a froofy, too intellectual drama, intellectual word. I mean, it's like,
Well, I mean, the rubber meets the road where the essence is felt, right, Jordan? It's
yes,
like you can feel it.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
think
and
this whole
go
this whole
ahead, sure.
paragraph, this whole paragraph with nouns as a stream of adjectives. I mean, it's, oh my Lord, it's just a whole intellectual academic ivory tower, which to me just makes a lot of philosophers terrified little boys in grown men's bodies. And it's like, why don't they just talk instead of, me doth blah blah blah. It's just so just airy. I don't know. And I
Right.
think you sharing this today is actually a really wonderful living gesture. That is, I think that's the point of psychology, is not to pick apart why and how and what. It's just to get your driver's license for yourself more fully.
Yeah.
I think it was important for you to go there too, Skip, because of the balance of, the school life and then the family life. And I feel like it was well rounded, and now you can move on with a full heart
Yeah. And
because there's a lot going on.
we have to, and everybody's got stuff going on. Okay, there's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And so I wanted to remind you about what we're doing in Jungian psychology. And this is the one sentence that applies. Um, and it is a sentence that was written by Lawrence Jaffe. He's the son of Agnella Jaffe, who was Jung's secretary. And unfortunately, he died in 2003. I would have loved to have talked to him, but anyway, he became a Jungian analyst and did a lot of work with Edward Edinger, among others. And we have video of Edward Edinger because of his work. But he summed up Jungian psychology in one sentence. And here's the sentence. The purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in the unconscious, in our unconscious. The purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in our unconscious. And so the reason that I am willing to do what I did for the first hour of this at all is because by telling stories like that, it causes you, the listener, to open your unconscious and say, how does that relate to me? And um, Anne Ulanoff said at one point in one of her books, or many books, that that the way she handles any session or a new patient especially is that she hears the troubles of the person and what they're going through, and then normally what she does is say, oh, that happened to me too, because a lot of healing and then she also says, oh, that happens to everybody. Right? Because a lot of psychological healing has to do with understanding that you're not alone. And a lot of people are alone, and I think a lot of people with mental health problems, um, don't have enough connection with other humanity, and they tend to have troubles. Um, but the point is that all of this, everything we've been talking about today, is about saying things that open keys to everybody's unconscious, not only mine. I mean, obviously, I don't mind telling these stories, but my purpose in telling them in a group like this is so that it opens your unconscious, so that you see that, the even though I deal with very complicated matters in my life, um, and I almost drove myself off the road in December, um, you know, that's the way life is for everybody. And
Well, even
and uh, and
you,
so you will have a connection to it unconsciously, which maybe you can bring into consciousness, and it helps heal you. Go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say, even the fact that, it was a surprise birthday party for your daughter, that's analogous to psychic contents bubbling up from the unconscious.
Yeah,
They come out of nowhere. Reasons are unreasonable. I mean, that's intuition. It has no need of reason.
right.
And the mind may think intuition is irrational, but then intuition kind of just would scoff at that and say, oh, all reasons are unreasonable. And it's interesting because even with mental health, I mean, when people say if you're lonely when you're alone, then you're really bad company. And you can't squirm out of that one. Whereas honestly, if you cherish your solitude and or protect your partner's solitude, that shows a capacity for love. And I think what's interesting is the lonely part is kind of, you know, whiny, petulant virtue signaling, and it's wimpy. And
Yeah,
it's a cry for attention. And yes, people need attention, but there's the well, pay attention to yourself. Um,
yeah,
and I think that's may sound a little harsh to some people, but at the same time, um, when I'm alone, it doesn't mean I can't do anything. I'm not a show pony. I don't need to have everyone see what I'm doing to make it have
yeah.
value.
And
It's
a lot of the troubles that people see are that things are unfair. Okay, like I'm
right.
sure there are a lot of our fellow Americans who think it's unfair that our future president here um, had no penalty from his conviction, his criminal conviction. Um, but
Well,
life is unfair. Life is unfair,
and then you
and
get all the background of that judge and his daughter and
mhm,
donations, which are illegal. And then you start to get lawfare versus legal system. What's justice? I mean, obviously, that the problem is we're in a legal system, not a justice system. And throw around justice and you have to add politics to it. I mean,
Yeah, but life is unfair. This is the point. And, the lady that's raising 12 kids,
yeah, that's
she, she didn't have that on her bingo card either,
you're right.
right? At age 70 to have 3 kids that are in school still, or I'm sorry, 12 kids that are still in school, 6 boys and 6 girls. Holy smokes. Can you imagine?
Right.
And yet some people deal with that and deal with it with grace, as a matter of fact. Um, and and so
Well,
you
it's
know,
interesting because that's a sacrifice, and sacrifice is the first step towards making something sacred.
yeah. And so that woman, more power to her, God bless her. And I hope that she gets some of those kids through that don't find their way into drug addiction or prison,
Well,
or
yeah, and
dead.
her sacrifice makes the sacred piece of throughout their life, they'll know that someone cared for them.
Right, exactly. And
That's important because it's modeling. If someone hasn't cared for someone, it's near impossible for them to connect other than in going through the motions. I mean,
yeah,
act like, but they don't feel like.
right. So, and it is healing for you, the audience, to see, you're not the only one suffering. We're all suffering in one way or another. And we're all making a sacrifice in one way or another. Maybe this is the teaching of Jesus's sacrifice in some way, that we're all suffering and we're all making sacrifices, and we have to do that in order to get by in life and so on. So, okay, let's see if we can get back into this for a bit here. Okay, the writing moves far beyond most conventions of elusiveness, so that we might invoke New Testament Greek's amphibalene, positing an amphilectical technique alongside the dialectical symboline units. 2 parts. Diaboline divides them, amphibalene casts all around. Sorry, I don't know those words.
No, look at that's
Drawing all into the surrounding net of voices, dialectics, and images. This multiplicity illustrates the pandemonium of images that Hillman locates in Jung's own self-analytical work. This is how Jung coped with his own process, turning inward and letting the storms transpose themselves into images. In advocacy of the reality of the psyche, giving fact and fiction equal validity, Shamdasani reports Jung's realizations that, quote, I went about with these fantastic figures as though they were patients and I was analyzing them, unquote. This aliveness is compelling, creating relationship between the characters and the reader, as though in a novel. I felt myself as participant on location, often resisting what I saw, heard, and overheard, while also registering deep satisfactions and disturbing epiphanies, witnessing and undergoing inner experiences episodically. Chapters are deemed adventures, and like Don Quixote, I was compelled by each thing that happens next with the same ineluctable openness. Such mixing of genres strict classicists would deplore. But by the 20th century, artists had gone far beyond initial condemnations of compounding in such modes as tragicomedy, tragical, historical, etc., that Shakespeare, profound psychologist that he was, recognized as psychically valid. Contemporary critical theorists now advocate conceptual blending theory, perhaps enforced by Joyce studies. The Red Book's morphing and mixing of styles and stylistic registers speaks to me of the riddlesome multifariousness of the world, in which Jung seeks reconciliation and union with no injury to the integrity of contradiction and paradox. In all this, I hear a polyphony of voices, a contrapuntal contrary music. All of the above acted as background music to my reading, something sometimes muted, sometimes assertive, resounding on my particular wavelengths. What follows is more significant and pressing, the matter of incandescence. From the very beginning of the Liber Novus, the Red Book, we are challenged by experiences of ultimacy trajectories into depth and height. We are introduced to the overwhelming in Jung's statement of 1957, reflecting on the years during which he declared faithfully to he dared faithfully to elaborate to the limit the inner images. What had burst forth from the unconscious and flooded me like an enigmatic stream and threatened to break me. He was swamped with excess and with some trepidation even questioned his own sanity, admitting to Mircea Eliade that as a psychiatrist, he was worried that he was risking a schizophrenia as he attended to dreams and visions that came to me from the subsoil of the collective unconscious. He described having been hit by a stream of lava. Nevertheless, he chose to persist to deepen and validate his discoveries. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a minute, Jordan.
So diaboline means to slander or to throw across, and no results for amphiboline. So if I go amphi, then I'm looking at to put around. So the difference between to throw across, like cast a net over, versus to put around, which would be a perimeter containment. So it's a difference between unites two parts by slander, so guilt by association, or unites two parts by surrounding them so that they can't move. So in a sense, the yin yang in one sense, but here the root is diabolos, diabolos, which is false accuser, which in then the New Testament, you can take the family tree on that one and keep going. But I think what's interesting is right after he mentioned psychodramatics versus psychodynamics, he goes into the most psychodramatic, oh my Lord, verbiage through paragraph after paragraph where it's, oh my God, he's going to send you to the Columbia 500,000 word dictionary from 1950 where all the cool words used to exist. And I mean, contrapuntal used to be my favorite word. It has nothing to do with, punting. It's basically a fancy word for counterpoint. So then I think is diaboline and then amphiboline is the counterpoint between to cast the net over versus to corral something in. But the false accuser piece is kind of a corralling something into guilt by association simply because you shine a light on it. And because I think there's the slander, there's the false accuser, and I appreciate learning, heck, a lot of new words in these paragraphs.
Yeah.
So, and anyway, I think, yeah, multiple paragraphs with psychodramatics, not psychodynamics. Just trying, but again, it's trying to be so descriptive of psychodynamics where, you might as well try to say, what's the meaning of life? Well, it's to live it and leave it alone. Don't have a relationship with life instead of a relationship conversation. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And it's like this, like the kids in the back seat on a road trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Look, guys, if you don't stop that, I'm turning around and driving back 17 states. We're not going. Disney World right there. We're not going.
And thank you so much, Kathy, for your comment on the YouTube. And what I'm doing right now is I'm putting the link for registering to receive notices. Let's see. So that if you want to participate with us in the panel, you will have the notice, because I send the links out every week to those who want to participate. And I'm grateful that Kathy has done. We have lots of people who have interacted with us over time, and Kathy has been a loyal follower for many years, actually, now, or several years, and we're glad to see you here now. And
thank you, Skip. You guys are welcoming. I definitely felt like I could say my comment without feeling like I was, inviting somebody to somebody else's party, because you're always very welcoming to whoever comes on. And
yeah, absolutely.
And people come and go, and people go and don't come back, and
yeah, I mean, very, very rarely, and it hasn't happened in years now, we do get a Zoom bomb happening to us. And so those people I expel immediately, as in be gone.
Yeah.
But
you don't need to be trolled. And I just want to say before I forget, the answer to the question, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Whether it's literally from kids in the back seat or metaphorically from somebody, who's not being present, the answer is always almost.
Almost. Very good.
I'm right here.
I mean, they're just looking for hope. Those kids just need hope. It's like, yep, almost, yep, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people, that it's again the difference between loneliness and solitude. If you're present, you're never not there, and
exactly.
And then you realize that the almost is curiosity and wonderment being fueled.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting here where in the paragraph, in advocacy of the reality of the psyche, giving fact and fiction equal validity, reminds me of Mark Twain. He said, I've had so many terrible problems through my life, some of which actually happened. It's like, so that the whole fiction piece of, in a sense, narrating the storms into images instead of troubling words.
Okay, so moving on now. This brought to his mind Nietzsche's problem, and what I do want to emphasize here is that Nietzsche was committed, to an asylum. Jung was not, and Nietzsche was committed for about 10 years. Whether he was crazy or not, I don't know. I don't think so, personally. But he did have a sister who was a difficult person and who may have deep sick some of his work. But he, but for Jung, the Red Book period, the intense parts of the Red Book period took place in 10 weeks. They took everything, 80% of the Red Book took place from Christmas Day 2013 to the middle of March 2014. All of it. Okay. So 80% of what you read in the Red Book happened during that period. And you go, oh my God, how did he ever cope with, write down, analyze, think about all of these things? I think, anybody that had that kind of an experience would be overwhelmed for the most part. And yet he wrote it, and he wrote it all down, and it carried him through. And so we all have periods like that. I mean, I had such a period when that came out as a novel that I don't push anymore. But I had such a period in 1993, and it lasted 8 months. But when it was over, it was over. And I'm convinced now that it was the autobiography of my anima for that period. Okay, for the period, not for the 8-month period, but for the period that the novel addressed. And once the story was told, it was over. Okay, and it was, and so I know how intense that was for me, and I didn't have the benefit of being a psychiatrist. It can happen because I'm convinced that this is what great novelists do, is they drop into their unconscious and they tell a story from the unconscious. And when they have writer's block, they are unable to get back into that space. That's what they're talking about. Because when it comes, it really comes in a rush. It looks like you want to say something, Kathy. No?
That's very, very in tune of you. I don't want to hold things up, but like
No.
the stories we tell sometimes are just the storyboard. I was having thoughts when you were sharing about, not being able to take the basket of candy home and the woman with the 12 children, and then the story that, that you and Jordan went into was one of her sacrifice and, her and bless her and this and that. And then the storyboard I went into was a creative writing story where they're her slaves at home and she's doing penance for being a crappy mom. So she feels like she owes it to her drug addicted children to take care of their 12 offspring and all of the neighbors too. And she's really just a martyr and she's not a good person. And I'm like, do we tell stories or do we learn each other's stories? Do we
Yeah.
take the time? And so that was just creative writing me. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, and I'm not asking you to explain her or yourselves. And yeah, that's all.
No, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
who knows? And maybe
Exactly.
we're to blame too, because if we don't give a certain group of our Black community a new opportunity, they go for what is near at hand. Okay. And so a lot of
I
these
had her in my
kids,
mind as a white woman. Sorry. In my brain, she's white.
yeah, well, okay, so she's white, but actually she wasn't.
Oh, I
And
know, but I'm just saying that to exemplify the fact that we tell storyboards and we take pictures in our brains and we take archetypes and we run marathons.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
it's funny because I like at my table. I mean, this summer I noticed it's like I don't use any of my stuff at my table. It's got to be their stuff because if I'm using my stuff, I'm making up stories. I'm assuming, and that makes an ass out of you and me if I spell
Mhm.
those, if I break down the word assume. And I think what's interesting is understanding to then temper what I conclude. And it reminds me of the Phantom Toll Booth, the book. If you jump to conclusions, well, there you jump to conclusion island. It's really hard to get off that island. So you
Right,
self indoctrinate with your own
right.
false narrative instead of
But yeah,
listening to their narrative.
And it's not to say everything that we perceive as false either.
right.
No, no, just I think
And
understanding that um, the fallibility is
well, we
important.
have a complicated world, and I look at these people that I'm often dealing with, people who have problems with drugs, and five people, relatives and closest friends and associates, have died from overdoses from fentanyl, including um, my brother-in-law's stepson died of it. Um, and so we've killed a lot of Americans with not handling our drugs properly. And I mean, it's a scourge. As long as it's handled in the way that it's handled, then we're not going to get things better. And so I'm hopeful that we will find more ways to legalize drugs and then treat people um, who get addicted, who need help, because I think that's the most sensible thing to do. And once we legalize it, then it's not a, a crime wave. you know. Then
Yeah,
then
and
that,
that brings
then there's no money in it for the mob, right?
well completely, and also the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The
Yeah,
opposite of addiction is connection.
yeah.
So there's a pain trying to be um, negotiated with a lot of substance use. And I mean, if you listen to Dr. Gabor Mate, he's like, they're trying to solve something. So the problem is, he said, they're trying to be actionable. The
Yeah.
idea of take this drink or take this pill, that first
Wow, look at that.
nice, that first notion is good. It's doomed to fail. Look at, oh
Did
yeah, yeah.
did you see what's going on YouTube? Cherie says, I wanted a black baby doll when I was little. And Kathy pulls out her black baby doll. Um, and she says, my mama and I sat on the back of the bus in Birmingham, Alabama in the 60s to get it from an all-white store. Well, my mama and the store lady got. But I don't know what comes after that,
Yeah,
Sheree. But
Cherie's sentence got cut off, but I went running and I just want to share. Honey, this is Honey. I'm 60, I'll be 60 something. How old am I? Oh, geez. I'll be 62 in March, and this is the first doll I ever got. When I was this big, probably maybe bigger. Her name is Honey, and my pseudo grandma gave, or my pseudo uncle, excuse me, Uncle Phil, my mom's kind of pseudo brother, gave her to me. And his mother, his real mother, had an absolute conniption. Um, oh, let's see. Cherie saying that the store lady, they got in a fight because I wanted a black baby doll. I got it after a big fight. It wet its diapers and had a bottle. My cousins put mustard in its diapers, and I said, well, I have to clean it. Thank you, Cherie. Cherie said Honey is beautiful. I'll butt out now. Anyway, yeah,
yeah,
she's a soft-bodied plastic hand and face, and textury hair. And oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you for enjoying honey.
Yeah, interesting, interesting.
Nice synchronicity there.
Yeah, that's a terrific one. All right, so
I
we're
love
gonna go
her.
back and talk about Nietzsche. We're all crazy as coots, that's for sure.
Well,
Okay.
you know, and I Nietzsche too. I mean, he literally could. It's not out of line to say that he could put in 2 sentences um, a whole book that someone else wrote. And I kind of wonder if I wonder if he densified himself. Jung wrote it out. There's breathing room,
Yeah.
even though lots of words, it's still intellectual, which is air element. So there's breathing room. Whereas he stayed in the intensity all the time. And
Yeah,
so
I have to admit that I'm liking Bob Dylan more in my dotage. I actually didn't like him or his music very much
at
uh,
all,
when
until
in the '60s, and I lived the '60s because I'm first year baby boomer, and and so I didn't really care for his music, but then I started to realize that a lot of the songs that I liked that other artists were doing were written by him. And and so this new biopic, A Complete Unknown, that's just come out, it doesn't make him a likable guy, okay, unfortunately. And
but I respect him now, and so I don't care about the
yeah.
music. I
That's
I
right. And I went to a Bay Sox Stadium concert of Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson one time, and I thought, wow, this is going to be a really cool concert, right? And we go in, and Bob Dylan had this huge amplifier system that it was either on a semi tractor trailer or it was on a huge trailer, and he had his own bus and the whole smash. And he comes and he plays, and he did not play any of his old favorites, not a single one. And because of the Bay Sox Stadium acoustics being terrible, I couldn't hear a word. I never understood a word in that concert. And and then when his gig was up, and so I said, "Boy, that I really don't. Why did he do that? That's not nice to do to your fans, right?" And so then he packs up, and this whole entourage of his departs the stadium, and then Willie Nelson is left in the middle of the stadium with his lounge grade um, amp. He's got a little amp he's standing next to that you would use in a club, right? And you couldn't hear that. Then you couldn't hear that because it wasn't tied into the amps for the stadium even, or the sound system of the stadium. So it was like, you can imagine, it's like somebody playing like they're in a lounge, but they're in the middle of the stadium. And so both of them, it was a terrible concert, big mistake. But now in retrospect, I'm starting to learn that, this is Bob Dylan's shtick. Once he became famous, people wouldn't leave him alone. And so he had to be uh, abusive only to keep things under control.
I didn't realize because I saw him in Lubbock, Texas, and I couldn't understand a word. It was just gobbledygook, and I didn't know if he had dementia or was drunk or didn't care, or that's just how he sounds. And what's interesting is one of the most conservative, prudish professors was like the historian on him. I mean, he was all of a sudden he came out of his shell, and he's like, wow, he just and I left the concert and um, never thought about Bob Dylan again. I mean, it confirmed the fact that I wasn't really interested. And then after this movie, I realized, you know, for him to be accused of being an iconoclast, he would have to give a damn about the rules in the first place. And
Yeah.
you know, Colleen Keever's quote of, you know, God help the artist with a gimmick. He's a consummate example of no gimmick. He's just, you know,
Yeah,
he's
and he says it in the movie. He doesn't
yeah,
he doesn't want to play in a concert something that he's already recorded, because
yeah. You can go.
if you want to hear it, go get a recording, you know, don't listen to him in a concert. Hear his new stuff. But the problem is you don't build a following that way, and that's quite intentional, I think. Um, and so I have a new respect for him, even though, you know, I didn't like him much in the 60s as a person, and I still don't like him very much as a
Yeah,
person.
now I know that what I was intuitively picking up on was I don't like the guy. And
Yeah,
now I respect the heck out of it. And
yeah.
so, yeah,
And
well,
when he won the Nobel Prize, there
for
was
literature,
there
yeah,
was a
yeah,
for literature. He won the Nobel Prize for literature, and he refused to go to the ceremony.
which
He
is classic
refused.
Bob Dylan. Yeah,
Yeah, he refused to, you know, get dressed up in a tuxedo. And there was a video of all the scientists that year who were in a room talking among themselves, and one of them said, "Thank God that Dylan did not come, because if he had come, he would have sucked all the air out of the room." And he was right. He was
mhm,
quite right. I mean, here are these serious scientists
yeah.
who had earned the Nobel Prize for medicine or physics or chemistry or what have you. And if Bob Dylan had gone to that event, it would have been a circus with Bob Dylan. But he had enough respect for them to know that and to not appear.
And you know what's interesting? That whole phrase of, you know, where to suck the oxygen out of the room. What happens is they're all engaged and warm, and he's a bonfire that's going to consume the oxygen, literally. You know, so
Yeah,
it's true. And in a sense, he was respecting not messing up their stuff, except that's giving him credit for something he probably didn't give a rat's about. You know, he just wasn't going to get in a tuxedo. So, and so in a sense, him doing what he normally does was actually better for the whole situation.
yeah. All right, so let's read about Nietzsche briefly, and or maybe we oh, let's see. We've really burned up
We've
the
kind of taken
morning.
burned up our 2 hours almost.
Yeah, so let's stop, because Nietzsche is a whole different topic.
Yeah, well, it's a gear shift. I think I agree. Let's because we can pick back up with Nietzsche because he's his own animal.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll start there. We're on page 299 of this book. We'll start there next week. And I apologize for not having done much of the book today, but I enjoyed the conversation.
I think we did psychodynamics today,
Yeah,
not
it,
psychodramatic.
it's wonderful when I'm doing all the talking. I hope people don't see it that way, because I don't intend for that to be the case, and I wish that we had more people participating. Thank you for coming, Kathy, and you know, we need to have more people coming to, you know, participating in the panel, because, and I'm talking about the Zoom panel, so you need to get a notice so you know where to come. Um but um you know,
It's literally more than
the point is to open access to the unconscious. And I hope that's what we do every week. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
And just
more,
remember, everyone that's here watching, and I remember this when I'm in your audience, and things go in a direction that um, just don't suit me in the moment for whatever reason, whatever
Mhm.
things, or whatever, right? Or if I need to go in another direction myself, there is no captive audience here. So everyone's here by choice.
Right.
And I think that, the people that come to chat are also loyal and regulars and seem to enjoy the interaction and may find some inspiration to come themselves. I totally encourage it. Thanks for having me.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think the
It's a
more the merrier,
pleasure.
because
Yeah.
the more perspectives we have, agreement, to me, agreement and being agreeable is actually negative. I mean, we don't need to agree on anything. We don't need to
Right.
agree, disagree. I think what happens is there's more of a dignity and difference and an empathic respect to this is the unconscious, mine, yours, Skip's, anyone, in the chat, and everyone has one. And yeah, and so honestly, the difference between Jung and Nietzsche is kind of an analogy here of how do you handle your life with the unknowns and the unconscious, and how do you access the healing power from those unknowns? So
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I always prefer when more people show up here to the Zoom panel,
Yeah.
because we end up, actually what happens is it dilutes Skip and me to um to include more.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important because otherwise we can become kind of talking heads. And I think in a good way, I think we both kind of navigate with an attention to, don't, the horse is dead, stop kicking it, let's move on, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
And
thanks for coming today, Kathy.
yeah.
Thank you.
And by the way, when I show art,
Get some rest.
I'm not trying to show off. I mean, at some level, maybe, but in principle, I'm
Perfect.
showing that you too, cool car, that you too can do this. Okay. It's nothing special that I'm doing. Okay. And this is what we love about Colleen Kibert, because she taught us that all of us can do these things. And if we do them, it's good for our mental health. I mean, I think that's for each one of us. Certainly good for mine, I think. And and if you do it, then you have some happy accidents. Okay, there's the four swords. You get some happy accidents with whatever you're doing with artwork, that hey, you want to keep this or you want to give it to a child or something like that. And Colleen wrote this book, Art and Spirit, and I very definitely, at 78 years old now, I very definitely am trying to leave my spirit behind, because there's a time when this carcass isn't going to be here anymore, but the spirit is undeniably in those pieces that I'm doing. And so that's what it's about. And so it's a way for all of us to infuse your life with your spirit in such a way that it'll matter to your children or whoever it is that you get involved with.
And look at the hours and hours of you on film that they'll have for the rest of their lives, Skip.
Yes, well, that is true.
Yes.
Your voice, your face, all of it. Good job.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of many reasons that I started to do this channel was that I realized that I have precious little from my grandparents. to point to what kind of people they were. Okay. I have a few photographs, and I have my maternal grandfather's gold watch that he got when after 50 years in the PRR. He worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad for 50 years. And and almost nothing else. And so part of the reason I've been doing this is so that my grandchildren have a handle on what kind of a person I was in my lifetime and am in my lifetime. So
What's interesting, my mom showed me a painting she did. There was a sketch she did of it maybe 10 years ago, and it was our family tree, but all visuals, pictures as far back as she could go. And then there were some portrait sketches of people more near like the 1700s kind of thing. But I'm looking at it and I said, well, this is different somehow than when you first did it. She goes, well, after the genealogy, I started to go into the biographies and look at the personalities. I said, yo, so why is this big angel right there? It's not in the center. She goes, oh, I needed to stop the tree because those three right there were not nice people. They were not good people. And I looked at it and I went, how cool. So even in her painting, she took the license of, let's add something in here to protect the rest of us. And
sure. And what do we see happening in a disaster, a tornado or a hurricane,
right.
or now the burning of Los Angeles? People, if they have to leave all of a sudden, what do they want to grab? They want to grab their photo albums.
Yeah.
Right. And that's their connection to who they are and who their family was. And I think it's important to have that. Right?
I think it is. And I think it moves the monkey business out of the way and keep what's important in front of us instead of moving around the monkey business or negotiating with the monkey business. It's like, no, we don't need those briars and arabesques of traps of no, here's my family and that's what it is. And
but I mean, they're for you to look at. It's like Jung saying what you should do is create a red book of your own. Okay, what he meant by that is basically the red book was his scrapbook album of major events in his life. That's what he recounted here. And the fact that the rest of us are interested are, well, okay, so the man wrote another 20 volumes, and he wrote some good things over that time. But that's what the Red Book is basically his album of what he was about. And so that's what you should be creating. You should have an album of your own. Now I have to start gathering mine together. I'm not getting any younger, so.
Well, it's interesting but Jung had his own red book and then his writings. And I remember for about a year, maybe 10 years ago, I started confusing William Blake and Nietzsche. I mean, I knew they were different, but I started to misattribute quotes to one or the other. And I finally realized that William Blake's etchings, acid corrosive on copper plate etchings, felt like Nietzsche's journal visually. And then I went, oh, they're so similar. One is doing it one way and one is doing it the other way. And then Jung did them both. So, and then once I kind of came to that, the Red Book hadn't come out at what was it? maybe it's longer. It must have been longer than 10 years ago because the Red Book came out in 2009. But anyway, timing didn't matter. But the fact that I noticed such a similarity that Nietzsche and William Blake felt to be incarnations of the same person,
Yeah.
you know, hundreds of years apart. And then Jung came in and put it all together.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. So thank you so much for being here again, as usual, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Skip.
Sharice is retired for another 20 years and was a pet, so we brought in the house, and my mama, Jenny, were eating dinner at the supper table like it was normal. It was hilarious. Yep. Anyway, peace. We look forward to